I'm Lisa Morgan, 30, and I thought I understood family loyalty until my younger sister Rebecca's engagement became the battlefield that exposed decades of lies, manipulation, and betrayal that nearly destroyed us forever. If you're dealing with toxic family dynamics or sibling rivalry, hit that like button and stick around. This story might save you from the devastating mistakes I made. Growing up, Rebecca and I were each other's anchors in a household where emotions ran high and boundaries were blurred. As her older sister, I naturally became her guide through childhood challenges, from playground bullies to teenage heartbreak. While our parents navigated their own complicated marriage, Rebecca and I formed an unbreakable bond. Our mother, Deborah, had always been the type of woman who commanded attention wherever she went. Charismatic and charming in public, but requiring constant validation and control in private. She had opinions about everything and wasn't shy about sharing them, especially when it came to her daughters' lives. Dad, Thomas, played his familiar role as the family diplomat, smoothing over conflicts and maintaining peace at any cost. "You know how your mother gets," was his standard response to any situation involving Deborah's more challenging behaviors. As adults, I pursued a career in marketing, building campaigns that told compelling stories, a skill that would later help me recognize when stories were being fabricated about me. Rebecca followed her artistic passions, working as a freelance graphic designer with a client base that appreciated her creative vision. When Rebecca met James Wilson at a coffee shop near her studio 18 months ago, I could see immediately that he was different from her previous boyfriends. James was steady, supportive, and genuinely interested in Rebecca's dreams and ambitions. He worked in financial planning, which meant he understood long-term goals and commitment. Their relationship developed naturally, built on shared values and genuine compatibility. When James proposed during a romantic weekend getaway last fall, Rebecca called me before anyone else, her voice bubbling with excitement and joy. "Lisa, you have to be my maid of honor," she exclaimed through happy tears. "I can't imagine getting married without you standing beside me." "Obviously I will," I replied, already mentally planning how to make her wedding dreams come true. "We're going to plan the most amazing celebration." The initial months of wedding planning were everything I'd hoped they would be. Rebecca, James, and I spent countless hours exploring venues, discussing themes, and creating vision boards that captured their perfect day. I took detailed notes during every conversation, determined to help translate their dreams into reality. My spare bedroom gradually transformed into wedding planning headquarters, with vendor portfolios, fabric samples, and inspiration photos covering every available surface. I loved being so involved in this milestone moment of Rebecca's life. The first sign of trouble emerged during what should have been a routine family dinner to discuss wedding logistics. Deborah arrived with a leather portfolio I'd never seen before, her expression radiating the confidence of someone with a secret plan. "I have wonderful news," she announced before we'd even finished our appetizers. "The grand ballroom at the historic Inn has agreed to squeeze us in this September. I put down a deposit this morning." Rebecca looked surprised but touched. "Mom, that's incredibly generous, but Lisa and I were planning to visit several venues next weekend to compare options." "Darling, the historic Inn books solid for 18 months in advance. We're fortunate they had a last-minute cancellation." Deborah patted Rebecca's hand while glancing triumphantly in my direction. "Besides, it's where I've always pictured your wedding taking place." That moment marked the beginning of Deborah's systematic takeover of Rebecca's wedding planning. Within weeks, she had positioned herself as the primary decision-maker, always with reasonable explanations about efficiency, connections, or experience. The vendors I'd carefully researched were suddenly deemed inappropriate or unavailable. The intimate ceremony Rebecca and James had envisioned grew into an elaborate production that seemed to reflect Deborah's preferences more than theirs. The color palette we'd chosen together was replaced with something more photographically appealing. "It's actually easier this way," Rebecca assured me when I expressed concern about the expanding scope. "Mom has so many connections in the industry, and she and Dad are contributing significantly to the costs. I can handle a bigger celebration if it makes everyone happy." I stepped back reluctantly, still offering help where I could but increasingly feeling like an observer rather than a participant in my sister's wedding planning. The exclusion began subtly at first. Vendor appointments I thought I was invited to would happen without me, with Deborah explaining afterward that there had been miscommunication about scheduling. Planning sessions moved to locations or times that conflicted with my work commitments. My cousin Megan, who had previously shown minimal interest in family gatherings, suddenly became Deborah's constant companion at wedding-related activities. Social media photos showed Megan helping select centerpieces, Megan at cake tastings, Megan offering opinions on bridesmaid dress options. Since when is Megan so involved in wedding planning? I asked Rebecca during one of our increasingly brief phone conversations. She's been really helpful, Rebecca replied, her tone slightly defensive. Mom says she has excellent taste, and it's nice having someone available during the day when you're at work. The response felt rehearsed, lacking the natural warmth of our usual interactions. I pushed down my growing concern, telling myself that wedding stress affected everyone differently. The exclusion accelerated 3 weeks before the ceremony when I discovered through a mutual friend that the bridal shower had already taken place. Photos on social media showed Rebecca surrounded by family and friends at an elegant tea party I'd never heard about. I called Rebecca immediately, no longer willing to pretend everything was normal. "Why wasn't I invited to your bridal shower?" I asked directly. "It was really last minute," she replied after a long pause. "Megan organized it, and Mom thought you were too busy with that big campaign at work." "Rebecca, I would have made time. You know that." "I know, Lisa. Sorry. There will be other events where you can be more involved." But those other events never materialized. The bachelorette party was planned without my input, featuring activities I knew Rebecca wouldn't enjoy. When I offered suggestions based on 3 decades of knowing my sister's preferences, they were dismissed as not matching the vibe Megan had created. 2 weeks before the wedding, I made a discovery that changed everything. Elena Martinez, James's sister who was also in the wedding party, called me with a troubling revelation. "Lisa, I need to tell you something, and I'm not sure how to say this delicately." My heart began racing. "What's wrong?" "Your mother has been sharing some concerning information about you. She's been telling people in the wedding party that you've been making negative comments about Rebecca's choices, that you're jealous of the attention she's receiving." The words hit me like a physical blow. "Elena, I've never said anything negative about Rebecca or her wedding. Where is this coming from?" "That's exactly what I thought," Elena replied. "It doesn't match the person I know you to be. But she's been showing people text messages supposedly from you, making cruel comments about the wedding planning and Rebecca's decisions." "I never sent messages like that." "Show me what she's been sharing." "That's the problem. When people ask to see the messages again, she always has an excuse about deleting them or them being on a different phone." "Lisa, I think your mother might be fabricating evidence to isolate you from the wedding." The systematic nature of the manipulation was breathtaking. Deborah hadn't just excluded me from planning activities. She'd been actively destroying my reputation within the family and wedding party. That evening, I received a text from Rebecca. "Need to talk about the wedding situation. Can you come to Mom and Dad's tomorrow at 7? We need to clear the air." I arrived at my childhood home the next evening with a heavy heart and a folder full of evidence. Screenshots of my actual supportive messages to Rebecca, receipts for wedding contributions I'd made, emails showing my genuine enthusiasm for her special day. Deborah answered the door with a smile that seemed both welcoming and predatory. "Lisa, perfect timing. Everyone's waiting in the living room." The scene inside felt like a carefully staged intervention. Thomas sat in his usual chair, looking deeply uncomfortable and avoiding eye contact. Rebecca perched on the edge of the sofa beside James, her expression unreadable. Deborah positioned herself standing behind them in a protective stance. And there, in what had always been my seat during family discussions, sat Megan, looking simultaneously nervous and self-satisfied. "Rebecca," I began, remaining standing since no one had offered me a place to sit, "you said you wanted to talk about the wedding." "There have been some issues," Rebecca said quietly, glancing up at Deborah before continuing. Mom has shown me some messages and heard some comments that suggest you're not fully supportive of my wedding choices. What messages? I asked, pulling out my phone. Show me exactly what you're referring to. An uncomfortable silence filled the room as Rebecca looked to Deborah for guidance. It's not about specific messages, Deborah interjected smoothly. It's about patterns of behavior. The way you've tried to control every aspect of the planning, your negative reactions when decisions didn't go your way, your attempts to make yourself the center of attention during what should be Rebecca's special time. I stared at my mother in disbelief. What negative reactions? What attempts to control anything? I've supported every decision, even when I wasn't consulted. See, there it is again, Deborah said with satisfaction. The victim mentality. Everything has to be about how you've been treated unfairly. I turned to Rebecca desperately. You know me better than anyone. In 30 years, when have I ever tried to steal your spotlight or undermine your happiness? Rebecca's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't speak. The truth is, Deborah continued, delivering what felt like a prepared speech, we've all agreed that your presence at the wedding would create unnecessary drama and tension. Megan has graciously agreed to step in as maid of honor. The words landed like physical blows. Not only was I being excluded from my sister's wedding, but I was being replaced by someone who barely knew her. Rebecca, I said one final time, my voice barely above a whisper, is this what you want? She looked up at me with tears streaming down her face, but remained silent. I see, I said quietly. I turned toward the door, then paused. For the record, I have never said or done anything to undermine your happiness. But I suppose that doesn't matter now. I walked out without another word, driving home through tears that made the road blur dangerously. My boyfriend Tyler was waiting when I arrived, his hopeful expression crumbling when he saw my devastation. What happened? He asked, immediately pulling me into his arms. The entire story poured out between sobs, the months of manipulation, the fabricated evidence, Rebecca's silence when I needed her most, the family's collective decision to exclude me from the most important day of my sister's life. This is insane, Tyler said when I finished, anger clear in his voice. You're her sister. You've done nothing but support her. Apparently that's not enough, I whispered, exhaustion overwhelming me. That night I made several painful decisions. I transferred the $5,000 I'd saved for Rebecca's wedding gift back to my savings account. I canceled the surprise honeymoon upgrade I'd secretly arranged for their trip to Italy. Most difficultly, I wrote a letter to Rebecca explaining the truth about our relationship and Deborah's manipulation, though I wasn't sure I'd ever have the courage to send it. 4 days later, my phone rang at midnight. James's name appeared on the screen. Lisa. His voice was shaky, urgent. Something's happened. Rebecca and I need to see you immediately. They arrived at my apartment 30 minutes later, both looking shattered. Rebecca clutched a manila folder, her hands trembling. We found these, she said, setting the folder on my coffee table with papers spilling out. Mom left them at our place by accident yesterday. The documents were a detailed record of Deborah's manipulation campaign. Fake text conversations crafted to look like exchanges between Rebecca and me, but containing words I'd never written. Notes about strategies for isolating me from wedding activities. Even drafts of the speech she'd given that terrible night. Cruel comments about James, complaints about wedding expenses, dismissive remarks about their choices. All fabricated and attributed to my phone number but written in a voice nothing like mine. She created an entire false narrative, Rebecca said, her voice hollow with realization. For months, she's been showing me these fake conversations, making me believe you were saying terrible things behind my back. James pulled out his laptop. We also found her backup files. She'd been forwarding your real supportive messages to herself, then deleting them from Rebecca's phone and replacing them with these fabricated ones. The systematic cruelty was overwhelming. Deborah hadn't just excluded me from the wedding. She'd orchestrated an elaborate campaign to destroy my relationship with Rebecca. Rebecca, I said quietly, I need you to understand something. Every word of support I've given you has been genuine. I have never, not once, said anything negative about your wedding or your choices." She broke down completely then, collapsing onto my sofa. "I'm so sorry, Lisa. I should have trusted my instincts. The messages never sounded like you, but Mom was so convincing, so detailed in her explanations. I started doubting my own judgment. Why didn't you ask me directly?" I asked, needing to understand how we'd gotten to this point. "Because I was scared," she admitted through tears. "Scared that maybe it was true, that maybe you were resentful or jealous. It was easier to believe Mom's version than to risk a confrontation that might damage our relationship permanently." James leaned forward. "We confronted your mother yesterday after finding these files. Her reaction was disturbing. She wasn't sorry or embarrassed. She was furious that we'd discovered her plan." "What exactly did she say?" I asked, though I dreaded the answer. "That she was protecting Rebecca from your toxic influence," Rebecca replied. "That you'd always been controlling and jealous. That you were trying to sabotage the wedding to make yourself feel important. When we said we were going to expose her lies and restore your role as maid of honor, she threatened to boycott the wedding and turn the entire family against us. The manipulation was even worse than I'd imagined." "And what did you tell her?" "That we choose truth over lies," James said firmly. "That we choose healthy relationships over toxic control. That if she can't accept you as Rebecca's maid of honor and treat you with respect, then she's not welcome at our wedding." The validation brought a rush of emotion I hadn't expected. For months, I'd been gaslit into questioning my own reality, my own worth as a sister. "There's more," Rebecca said quietly. "Dad was there during part of the confrontation. When he saw the evidence of what Mom had done, he didn't defend her. He said he was ashamed of enabling her behavior for all these years." We spent the rest of the night planning how to address the family situation. The wedding was in 3 days, and while we couldn't undo all the damage, we could control how things moved forward. "I want you as my maid of honor," Rebecca said firmly. "If Mom can't accept that and behave respectfully, she can attend as a regular guest or she can stay home." The next morning, we arranged a family meeting at Thomas's suggestion. We met at a neutral location, a private dining room at a local restaurant where Deborah would be less likely to cause a public scene. When we arrived, Deborah was already seated with Megan beside her, clearly expecting this to be another planning session where she controlled the narrative. Her confident expression shifted to confusion and then alarm when she saw Rebecca, James, and me enter together, followed by Thomas carrying the folder of evidence. "What's going on here?" Deborah demanded, her voice sharp with suspicion. "The truth," I replied simply, taking a seat across from her. What followed was a methodical presentation of evidence. The fabricated text conversations, the deleted real messages, the systematic campaign to isolate me from Rebecca's wedding, the months of lies told to family and friends. Thomas, speaking more firmly than I'd heard in years, laid out the new family boundaries. Deborah could participate in the wedding if she acknowledged her behavior and committed to treating all family members with respect. If not, she would be welcome to attend as a guest only. "You can't be serious," Deborah said, her voice rising dangerously. "After everything I've done for this family, for this wedding, you're going to side with her manipulations over mine?" "What manipulations, Mom?" Rebecca asked quietly. "Show us one example of Lisa manipulating anyone." Silence stretched as Deborah realized her usual tactics wouldn't work with irrefutable evidence staring everyone in the face. Megan, looking increasingly uncomfortable with her role in the deception, finally spoke up. "Mrs. Morgan, I think maybe we should listen to what they're saying." "Don't you dare turn on me now," Deborah snapped, her composure completely gone. "I brought you into this family's inner circle when no one else cared about your opinion." "Actually," Megan said quietly, "I never wanted to replace Lisa. You made me feel like I had to choose between being included in family events or standing up for what felt wrong." The meeting ended with clear consequences established. Deborah could attend the wedding and behave respectfully toward all family members, or she could stay home. The choice was hers. She chose to attend, though her compliance seemed more strategic than genuine. The wedding day itself was beautiful in ways I'd never expected. Standing beside Rebecca as her maid of honor, watching her marry James surrounded by people who genuinely loved and supported them, felt like a victory for truth and authentic relationships. Deborah maintained appropriate behavior throughout the ceremony and reception, though I noticed her shooting resentful glances my way when she thought no one was watching. The most meaningful moment came during the reception when Thomas approached me at the family table. "Lisa," he said quietly, "I owe you an apology that's decades overdue. I've watched your mother manipulate situations to maintain control, and I've stayed silent to avoid conflict. I should have protected you and Rebecca from those patterns." "Dad, let me finish," he interrupted gently. "You showed incredible courage in standing up for truth, even when it meant facing serious family consequences. I'm proud of you, and I'm committed to being better going forward." 6 months after the wedding, our family dynamics had undergone significant changes. Deborah began therapy at Thomas's insistence, initially resistant but gradually more willing to examine her behavioral patterns. The progress was inconsistent, but it was progress. Thomas discovered a backbone he'd kept hidden for decades, setting and enforcing boundaries he'd never maintained before. Their marriage entered a new phase, healthier but requiring constant work. Rebecca and my relationship grew stronger than ever, built now on complete honesty and mutual respect rather than family obligation tempered by manipulation. She made me godmother to her daughter born 18 months later, a role I treasure deeply. I learned invaluable lessons about recognizing manipulation, setting healthy boundaries, and the crucial difference between maintaining peace and enabling destructive behavior. These insights improved not just my family relationships but my professional abilities in creating authentic marketing campaigns. Tyler and I got married in an intimate ceremony where every person present was there by genuine choice, not family pressure or obligation. Rebecca served as my matron of honor, and we included a moment in our vows acknowledging the journey that brought us to healthier relationships. The path from that devastating night when I was banned from Rebecca's wedding to where our family stands today wasn't linear or easy. It required courage to face painful truths, wisdom to distinguish healthy relationships from toxic ones, and strength to demand the respect we all deserved. If you're facing similar family manipulation or exclusion, remember that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to enable destructive patterns. Your worth isn't determined by others' ability to recognize it, and sometimes what looks like family loyalty is actually enabling abuse. Setting boundaries isn't cruel. It's creating space for genuine love to flourish. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this story. Have you ever had to stand up to family manipulation or fight for your rightful place in important family moments? How did you find the courage to value yourself when others couldn't see your worth? Drop a comment below and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share if this story resonated with you. Your support means everything as we navigate these complex family dynamics together. Thank you for listening, and remember, your story matters too.